Now on BBC World News, the latest business news from across the globe. World Business Report.
Fighting fire with finance. The US imposes more sanctions on Russia as Ukraine's finance minister tells us financial help needs to keep coming. Cutting prices for the cord cutters. Netflix slashes its prices around the world as it tries to fend off growing competition. Welcome to World Business Report. I'm Jonathan Josephs. Thank you for joining us wherever in the world you are. As we've been hearing, it's a year since Russia invaded Ukraine, and as well as the terrible human cost, it's also had a massive impact on the economies of both those countries, as well as the rest of the world. Another sign of that has come in the last couple of hours, with the United States announcing a range of new sanctions targeting Russian financial institutions, mining, and the defence industry. It's part of the West's effort to use its financial power to end the fighting and cut off President Putin's funding for it. The EU and US are amongst those who have given billions of dollars to Ukraine to keep its economy going through the war. But will that help keep coming? That's the question my colleague Aaron Heselhurst has put to Ukraine's finance minister, Sergei Marchenko.
We are confident when we see money in our accounts. Yeah. If not, we should keep moving, we should keep negotiation. Of course, now we see that Ukraine's under tremendous support. All democracies support Ukraine, and it also creates necessary environment for political support for Ukraine. We, despite that it could be some fatigue for Ukraine's case, now we haven't seen fatigue.
Much of the support you've received, particularly from the EU, has been in the form of repayable loans rather than, well, donations. I mean, I'm just wondering, are you worried that you're going to be saddled with a mountain of debt that you're just not going to be able to pay off?
We're not worried about that concern right now. Of course, for us, it's preferable to receive grant financing. But MFA financing, macro-financial assistance from the EU, it's the money which they can provide for us. And the money which we attracting from the EU is rather cheap money because EU borrows from their risk, as well as money with long-term maturity.
And you can see more of that interview with Ukraine's finance minister Sergei Marchenko on Talking Business with Aaron Heselhurst this weekend here on BBC World News. The times are on your screen, with the first airing at 22:30 GMT on Friday. Well, let's pick up on those themes that we heard from in the interview with the minister there, the economic impact of the war on Ukraine. Emily Mansfield is Principal Europe Economist at the economic research company, the Economic Intelligence Unit, and she joins us now. Emily, a year on, a massive impact on Ukraine's economy. It shrunk by more than 30%. But what does that mean in terms of living standards, as well as how the economy operates more generally?
Well, of course, it's had a huge impact on the reality of day-to-day life for people in Ukraine. That impact is very different depending on where in the country you look. So, of course, in the south and east of the country, there is an ongoing conflict, which has a huge economic impact. And that covers about half of the country's industrial heartland as well. So that's very difficult. Much of Ukraine's critical energy infrastructure has also been destroyed by Russian missiles, causing problems across the country. But what we're really seeing is that actually business activity is holding up really quite well in the western parts of the country. That's partly to do with foreign inflows of capital, and partly also just sheer determination on the part of Ukrainians.
And Emily, you mentioned the word energy. That's one of the key drivers of the inflation problems that this war has caused, particularly in Europe, but also around the world in general. It's been energy and food prices that have been driving inflation to record highs. Is there any sign of those impacts easing?
Well, from a purely statistical year-on-year comparison, yes, we will see inflation easing this year. And so that will really help with the cost of living crisis that we're seeing in Europe. Also, energy prices, they are stabilizing now. They are stabilizing at a very elevated level, but we're not expecting big spikes now in gas prices. And actually, for example, European gas prices have come down a fair bit. We've been quite lucky with quite a mild winter, and that's meant that those energy costs have come down, and Europe has been able to escape a recession despite Russia's best efforts to weaponize its gas supplies.
So Russia trying to use some of its financial might there in terms of energy, but the United States and the European Union have been leading the way in a different kind of financial fight with sanctions. We've had more of them from the United States on this first anniversary. What sort of impact are those having? Are they making a difference?
Well, they are having a huge impact on Russia's economy. It's not always entirely transparent because Russia has stopped publishing some of the economic indicators it would usually publish. But by looking at a variety of different sources, we can see that the Russian economy is really contracting, and we expect it to contract 2 years in a row, which is very, very unusual. Typically, if an economy goes through a recession, there's always a bounce back the next year. So this is a real sign that those sanctions are having quite heavy impact on Russia in terms of the goods that it can acquire, both for industrial production and also for consumers. And that will have a growing impact as time goes on, gradually eroding Russia's economy and eroding its status as a global energy superpower as well, because it simply won't be able to, for example, drill for energy in the Arctic without high-tech Western technology.
Very interesting point there. Emily Mansfield from the Economist Intelligence Unit, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, the US streaming giant Netflix has cut prices in more than 30 countries as it attempts to attract more subscribers. It comes amid the rising cost of living, which has meant households tightening their belts, and Netflix also facing increased competition from other streamers. So what does this all mean? Let's speak to our technology reporter, Shona McCallum, who joins us now. Thanks for joining us, Shona. Can you tell us which countries are these price cuts happening in first, and what sort of impact do you expect they will have?
Well, clearly Netflix's aim is to make it more attractive to people in 30 countries. That includes Indonesia, Thailand, Venezuela, Kenya, Iran. So interesting countries that they've selected for this new reduced rate, not including the US or the UK. And we don't have the details of exactly what the pricing will be in each country, but we know it will be reduced to up to a half, so a significant reduction, and clearly something that Netflix is trying to do as it tries to kind of hold on to its reign. It has been at the top of the tree in terms of video sharing platform for a long time. It still is at number one. But as people are, grappling with the cost of living, I think they may be deciding which luxuries they want to spend their money on. And will they have multiple streaming services? Perhaps not. So, if Netflix is the most competitive price, it's hoped that they will continue with their loyalty with Netflix.
You mentioned the competition there. We've got really deep-pocketed companies competing with Netflix, the likes of Apple, Amazon, Disney. There's so much choice out there. This is a tough environment for Netflix, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and Netflix is still holding on to that top spot, but you mentioned some of them, and I think the biggest competitor for Netflix is Amazon. Amazon Prime also has incentives, like it has the free deliveries, and it also has free Kindle books, so it's quite an attractive option. It sits at number 2. Then you have the likes of HBO coming in, and HBO is expanding its services in Scandinavia, so the Nordics. It's really trying to push on with the international market. You've got Paramount, you've got Apple and Hulu, and my personal favourite, Disney Plus, but it has a great selection of programmes on there, Marvel, Star Wars, the new Toy Story coming through. So, a lot of options, and people, are weighing up what programmes ultimately they prefer to watch.
Well, as long as people have got time to watch World Business Report, I think we'll be okay. Shona McCallum, thank you very much for the latest on Netflix there. Now, let's have a look at some other stories this hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called on global financial leaders to focus on the world's most vulnerable citizens as he hosts the latest G20 meeting in the city of Bangalore. Without directly referencing the war in Ukraine, he noted how geopolitical tensions have created instability and challenges to both food and energy security around the world, with vulnerable communities more hurt than others by those challenges. And that's all we've got time for on World Business Report. There's plenty more on the website at bbc.com/business. Thanks very much for watching.